As a bit of an introduction to John, he is the founder and CEO of Companion Labs and Companion Professional. He started his career at Bain & Company in San Francisco with degrees in mechanical, aeronautical, and systems engineering. He helped in product and business development at several early-stage deep tech companies, which became large businesses in nanotechnology, cloud, and 3D printing, including AMPX, AppDirect, and VLD. Immediately before Companion, John spent time at Google working with the Google X, Google Research, and Google Robotics divisions. At Companion, John works with colleagues to explore what we can understand about animals and their health at home using computer vision.
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good. We're still waking up. All right, so I'm going to cheat a little bit. We've done this talk a couple of times, and it's always fun to start with a video.
Hi, my name's John. If you're like me, you care about the health and wellness of all animals. Computer vision is about to radically change what we can understand about each and every animal's health. Over the next few minutes, we'll talk about how and why this is happening, starting with the collision of two facts. Fact one is that animals primarily communicate with movement and posture. Fact two is we now have all of these cameras and all of these AI chips all over the world in our phones, our doorbells, our buildings, and cars that have much more precision, have infinite patience, and perfect memory. There's no future in which all of these cameras don't help us start picking up on all these patterns that our animals already emit and help us much more deeply understand them. You may be skeptical, and you have reason to be. Tech has often overpromised and underdelivered. There's a famous Silicon Valley expression. We wanted flying cars, but instead we got 140 characters. In other words, we wanted science fiction, but all we got was online complaining. Products like patient management systems have helped organize our practices, but haven't fundamentally changed how we can detect and treat diseases. We see some improvement in helping automate existing areas like radiology and slide review, but we feel like we've only gotten a taste of the potential. But we're at a moment in time where computer vision breakthroughs are going to radically change our approach to animal healthcare. From the beginning of animal domestication, the first way we got information about an animal's health was simple. We looked at them. And to be honest, that's still the heart of animal care today. A veterinarian looking at the patient in front of them. Animals communicate with their bodies. We can learn about their health by observing their body shape, their body color, their fur or lack thereof, how they hold their back or neck, how they go from a sit to a down, how they naturally walk and run. And we can observe behavior. How do they change their consumption patterns, their sleeping patterns, their activity, signs of fear, anxiety, or stress. All of these observations can be linked to specific conditions and can be used to help diagnose and treat animals. Our eyeballs are our first diagnostic tool, and our training lets us know what to do with what we see. Technology has done a lot to enhance the eye, whether that's Muybridge using photography to understand the gait of a horse, X-rays and other radiology tools, motion capture where cameras track ping pong ball markers in the approximate locations of joints to help track gait patterns, and the reality that we now have professional quality cameras everywhere, from phones in our pockets to everyday things like our doorbells. Here's why this moment matters. Computer vision is going to allow all of these cameras to become a trained eye that can contribute to screening with perfect memory and perfect attention. Veterinarians don't have time to watch hundreds of hours of footage to look for the subtle movement issues of your dog. Computers do. This is what computer vision is making possible. Cameras connect to intelligent computers that can constantly analyze our animals with perfect attention. The advancement of next-generation neural networks, the same types of technology behind companies like OpenAI, is driving this. Essentially, machine learning is when you train software to recognize patterns in images or video. So, for example, back around 2010, Google created a neural net and powered it with some of the most sophisticated hardware in the world in order to let it solve one of the most pressing questions of humanity. Can YouTube recognize whether it's a dog or cat video? But now, more than 10 years later, we use this technology every day. When you unlock your phone with your face, that's computer vision. It's how your doorbell camera can tell whether there's a package or a person at your door and who it is. More importantly, this can be done in real time in unpredictable environments. In San Francisco today, instead of an Uber or Lyft, you can order a self-driving car from my alma mater, Google, that navigates the world in real time using only what it sees. These types of applications require intuitive, human-level understanding, exactly what is needed to help understand what is happening with our animals. And while we've had access to early types of technology in this field to help with lab samples or radiographs, we are now starting to see the impact of these latest generation neural networks for the first time. Here are 4 short video clips of dogs from a national trial data set soon to be published. Can you tell which ones are currently experiencing lameness and pain due to osteoarthritis? If you can't, don't feel bad. Many of the pet parents in the study didn't know either, and they live with their dogs. It's challenging even for clinicians to pick out the more subtle, earlier cases, especially without ideal video quality. These clips are short, they're dark, and it's hard to get a good glimpse of all of the potentially affected limbs. This is what's kept us from being able to use video in-home to date. The quality tends to be really bad, and the software we've had before wasn't capable enough to look for patterns. It required guidance, like these motion capture markers. However, today, this has all changed. The same national trial data set shows that this technology, when tested against a panel of GPs and specialists, is now at human or superhuman levels of accuracy. Specialist levels, not trained pet parent levels, not prosumer levels, but specialist levels. This is particularly exciting because these machine learning algorithms were not gait specific, meaning they are general purpose learning algorithms that can be applied to any number of tasks. And as almost every health problem in animals has a visual component, it means it's highly, highly likely that these types of algorithms can be trained to spot and track a number of conditions. The implication is that computer vision can recognize, flag, and track these changes much earlier than a veterinarian would even have a chance to try to catch them in a clinic setting with an anxious or scared dog obscuring the visual signs. Another way of thinking about it is there are already lots of cameras and videos out there that see clear signs of animal health conditions. We just don't have infinite amounts of clinician time and money to review them today. Everything changes if machine learning with infinite patience and perfect memory can augment clinicians in reviewing all of this video. Your clinician can't spend 1,000 hours reviewing footage of your dog captured through your doorbell camera over the last year, but this software is more than happy to look at all of that for every single patient with perfect attention and precision. This is going to change animal healthcare forever. It's not a question of if, it is happening. Here are some examples of how you will see this technology emerge in the coming months. The technology has already been implemented into the cloud and integrated into PIM systems for clinicians. It is enabling veterinarians to have access to natural gait footage in home, along with screening data, all within their current PIM system. When reminded of their upcoming appointment, the client is automatically prompted by the software to take a video of their dogs in home, and the software automatically checks them for quality before inserting them into the PIM system. This gives the clinician a variety of superhuman abilities to see the natural gait of the dog inside of the home, the perfect memory of pulling up all the historical videos of how that dog moved over time, and to have the machine learning algorithm review the footage without fatigue or distraction before the clinician even opens up the file. The largest doorbell camera companies in the world are also becoming active in the space. The doorbells see animals walk in and out of the house every day. Soon, customers will be able to opt in to automated analysis of this footage, having a helpful eye passively watch to make sure their loved one's okay. Computer vision can pick up subtle changes that we miss because we see our dogs every day. If issues are detected with the animal, whether in a single moment or in changes over time, the animal owner will be prompted to seek veterinary care, armed with a curated package of data and clips to enable the veterinarian to review the issue and make their decision, empowering the clinician. This isn't years out. This is today. These companies have already been engaged, and videos have been sourced across a number of in-home devices to validate the quality and views of these systems. Perhaps most exciting, we are barely scratching the surface of how good this technology is likely to get. The results achieved to date have 10,000 times less data than production machine learning models are given in the industry today. Not half, not 1%, 10,000 times smaller. It will only get better when it has access to more data. The learning part of machine learning is real. The deployments will generate their own data sets, which can be used to recognize new visual clues, the flywheel. There are many ways that we are going to see this moving forward. In the future, you can imagine catching changes in back or head posture, which could signal neurological issues, dermatological issues by observing subtle shifts in color, pattern, or fur over time. And an area I'm most excited about, learning to detect and analyze the micro and macro behaviors likely associated with anxiety or depression. This is going to be a generational change in animal health. Imagine what will be possible when perfectly patient software is analyzing weekly or even daily videos of tens of millions of animals. Imagine what patterns we might see given those superhuman abilities, but also simply data we've never had access to and at a scale previously just not possible. This is going to redefine animal healthcare. Together, we're going to achieve our goal of helping animals live happier, healthier, fuller lives.
So thanks for sticking with the video. As you can likely tell, it was designed for a veterinary audience, where I'm actually headed to a vet conference tomorrow morning. But I think most of the terms are probably familiar to you or intuitive to you. The one that might not be is, I mentioned PIMS a handful of times. It's a patient management system. So basically just trying to give clinicians the data that our algorithms can generate, or kind of write in the tools they already use, if that makes sense. I'm going to try to make this clicker work first. All right. So I'm going to talk in 4 different discrete chunks with the hope that you guys will interrupt those chunks with questions. So I'm going to pause at the end of each one. Sound good? So the first one is, who am I? What are the different companies that we have and work with? And then what is our mission? So hopefully, did anyone get a chance to meet Boomer last night at the event? So that's Boomer. These are the animals I live with. That's Naya the cat. That's Boomer. That's my son Pax. As Alistair was kind enough to do an overview of me earlier, my degrees are largely in engineering, mechanical, aero systems. I love building race cars, satellites, that kind of things in undergrad and grad. Went to Bain & Company, and then I got to help in a handful of firms I was deeply passionate about. One in the left-hand side is next generation batteries for clean energy. Super excited about that. And then on the right-hand side, got to help with this amazing entrepreneur who developed this new way of 3D printing titanium for very high-end aerospace structures. Think of like SpaceX rocket nozzles. And then I got the chance to work at Google because of these weird, disparate experiences in tech. I got this weird call from Google to come work with just the early research unit. So just Google X that does internet balloons and autonomous cars, that kind of thing. Google Research, so working with the TensorFlow team on thinking how do they externalize that asset. This was years ago. And then also Google Robotics, which is where I got really excited about the core premise of the video you guys just saw, which is this conviction that there's no way that all these cameras around us don't help us understand all of the animals around us, because they have much more precision, infinite patience, and perfect memory. They're going to spot these patterns that are really interesting to us, right? Both on the health side, but potentially also on conscious thoughts, right? So 2 companies. There's Labs, the hardware company, which is the public one. You'll see much more about that. We've kept the professional one very quiet, so there's not really a web presence. We don't really make announcements for it, but that's where we do all the work on health algorithms with the goal of getting to a variety of other use cases we'll talk through later. That's Boomer. That's the hardware. Just to confirm, the hardware company has created a device that can automatically interact with an animal. The core use cases are things like, can we lower separation anxiety in dogs who are kept for hours and hours at home, even though their owners want to be there, they got to go to work. And then 2, can we increase the human-animal bond, because not only do we use fun games and things that are interesting to the dog, but we also actually shape behavior of all the basic obedience commands that are associated with increasing the human-animal bond, like sit, down, recall, watch, stay, all that kind of stuff. It makes you more comfortable living with your dog. The hardware company is where we realized that we were actually starting to see animals in pain where the owners didn't know it. Because these devices would sit in these homes for months on end with the dog for 10 hours a day, and the devices would actually see when the animals would start moving differently because they were in pain. So they would stop going from a down to a sit, or they would do it differently. And we realized that, oh man, we are seeing so many of these, and we actually would reach out to that client at home and say, hey, we're pretty sure your dog's in pain. Why don't you give your dog a pain reliever? And we'd watch that animal do those behaviors later that day. And that's when we got pretty excited about going deeper on the health side. Our mission, so it's really hard to read from that direction. I'm going to get back on my phone. Basically, what we're really interested in is, can we better understand animals? And the hardware company is also like shaping behavior, shaping communication skills between the two. But ultimately, the goal is to increase empathy by doing so. The core belief being, if we understand more about each other, it's quite likely that you will likely be able to generate more empathy because of it. First, any questions so far? That was a lot.
John, thank you very much. Really impressive video and really impressive product. We've got one question from Zachary, who's in the audience now. Is that right? Thank you, Zachary. Just because of the size of the room, I'll read it out. How can we deal and handle false positives in analysis? These issues are often not recognized by humans, even when the people are around the animals, as you pointed out. Is bringing the footage and analysis to a specialist to confirm its validity a necessary part of the process for the foreseeable future?
Yes, absolutely. You hit on the crux of what we have been solving for, which, especially when you introduce a new technology, it has to be better than the existing technology for people to be interested in it. So it's the same thing with autonomous cars, right? Autonomous cars aren't really going to scale until they're actually far better than human drivers, and we have a bunch of data that says it. So what we've been doing with our animal health partners is proving in large trials, field trials, like kind of regional, then national, that the technology is at actually a GP or specialist level or above that. And with one of the features of machine learning of software that many of you guys know is that you can actually tune the confidence. So when we go out in different distribution channels with this technology, we tune it so that basically we're almost positive we will not generate any false positives. Because the last thing we want is for the technology to be known as the boy who cried wolf, for lack of a better phrase. So we will miss cases, but when we say that you should really look at this dog because we're pretty sure it's in pain, we are near positive. And I think the key to that is you have to be transparent. You can't say that we're not saying this is a diagnosis. This is a mass screening tool at first. So we're like I said, we're going to miss some things, but you can count on us to tell you that you should look at this dog when we do say it. Cool. Anything else?
Thanks, John. That's it for now. Please continue submitting questions via the TopCat app and upvote them as well. Back to you, John.
Cool. So let's talk about what's changed with computer vision, the implications of the future. Great. So this is actually a video which should be really hard to see. That's the point. From one of the national trials I just mentioned, where we've quietly been working for the last 4 or 5 years with these very large animal health firms, pharmaceutical firms, to prove that this technology is as good or better than a clinician at spotting these different conditions. And the real change is that now with the latest generation of neural networks, you can teach it, or it can teach itself to see very, very subtle, very sparse signals. So whether you're looking for the animal moving its hips slightly differently, whether you're looking for a quarter-second hesitation, but if you only had a 2-second clip of the video and you knew something was in there, that's one problem. But if you have a 5-minute video of an animal where it only shows that hesitation for a quarter of a second throughout that 5 minutes, it's a really, really hard problem. But with the latest techniques, we've been able, we think, to come up with a novel way of starting to spot these things. And that's what's been able to put up these types of performance metrics. There's a heavily redacted thing up top that said one of our big pharma partners just submitted this to Frontiers. We're hoping that it gets published here in the next 3 to 6 months, but we're not in control of it. But that will give you the background for these claims. What does that say? We believe. Yeah, so basically, the video talks about this a little bit, but there's nothing gait or dog specific about anything the company is doing. Meaning, we don't teach the software the notion of a dog. We don't teach the software the notion of gait. We are telling it to recognize pixels and patterns within large clips that we assign a diagnosis to. And that's why we're particularly excited and have strong confidence that this can generalize to other species and other conditions. So this is things like body shape. So determining is an animal, one of the biggest problems in animal health today and companion animal health is obesity. So just helping owners track this, flagging it to them and giving them a message, hey, we noticed your dog's on this trajectory to gain quite a bit of weight, and it typically lowers your dog's lifespan by X to Y years. If you just do this, it can be helpful, or flag it to the veterinarian, right? Color, coverage of the fur, posture, movement. So think of neuro, think of pain, eating consumption can give you some insight. We think we'll start to see lots of unknowns when it comes to eating patterns, sleeping patterns. We don't have data on that yet, but we have strong hypotheses about different underlying conditions you might spot. So to be clear, the way we think about this is we are dead focused on doing one thing well first, which is dogs and pain. We think we've developed a method that can scale horizontally across species, potentially on the production animal side, or for lack of a better term. and then also to other companion species. There's no technical reason why it can't, and we've seen relatively strong evidence with very small trials to suggest it will. But also we think it can go up and down. So we're focused on obesity, we're focused on pain right now, and that's what we can make claims on. But we're relatively confident we'll also be able to do the same thing with derm, with neuro, so looking for different back positions, head positions, shakes, that kind of thing. And then I can't wait to work our way up the ladder to look at fear, anxiety, stress, depression, and potentially other mental conditions, mental illnesses, however you might want to phrase it. Make sense? So implications. This is actually we just did a keynote for the largest animal health firm. So this is largely geared for an animal health executive audience, but I thought I'd go a little bit deeper into the animal health side so you can see where we're going, and then I'll pull back out and go to broader implications. One of the messages we're trying to convey to the industry is how many expensive, interesting studies are being conducted today that are not being captured on camera. And if you think about all of the animal research, regardless of what type it is, which partner it is, there's tens of hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on interacting with animals that we are currently not filming, and it's incredibly cheap to do so. And we think will have large implications later. So if I'm evangelizing anything, it's if you get the chance, please advocate for, hey, we should probably include a camera in the study. It might be interesting later, and it's super cheap to do. So sorry, my phone keeps locking. So I'm going to try to find this place again. So I also in the animal health field, how likely is it that we will have a new type of product ecosystem where it's relatively common to pair some form of treatment with a piece of software because you can't talk to the patient, the pet parent can't talk to the patient, but how likely is it that they pair that treatment with a piece of software so that they get a little bit more feedback? What happens with targeted medicines if you now can instantly recognize the breed, potentially different mixes of breeds, potentially individual dogs with targeted treatments? Who would develop so this is one thing we're really excited about. I'll talk a little bit later, but right now in the animal health industry, if you want to test a pain relieving drug, they put the animals under pain. So they inject a substance into joints to actually cause the animal pain and then see what the treatment does to alleviate that pain. We'd very much like to displace that mechanism and use our own computer vision system so they don't have to do that. So also we do think the other interesting thing about the animal health field is that they actually measure the pet parent subjective response. That's actually one of their key metrics in a lot of these studies is what does the pet parent think? What's the pet parent's take on how well the dog is doing? It's pretty far from being objective. And so we'd like to add much more objectivity in all these things. But not only is are these treatments effective, but also is this process causing the animal fear? Is this causing the animal stress? We'd like to install much more objective metrics on all those dimensions. Same thing here. The idea of all of these animals in different facilities all over the world, I think that if we can bring in a tool that allows us to objectively measure fear, anxiety, stress, pain, all of these things, I think that it's, maybe to put it another way, it's a lot of humans have a subjective response to have a different response as to what an animal's feeling based off what the animal's doing. I would love to create an objective standard for, is this animal in pain? Is this animal in fear? Is this animal in stress? The place where we've been talking a lot with our animal health partners on is noticing the trends in human health spending more, it being more socially acceptable, and there being more and more interesting ways to help with mental wellness. I do think that's where the companion animal space is headed, which is why I'm particularly excited about anxiety, depression within the companion animal space. And I do more and more I see that, I think we see buy-in that's going to be a pretty large focus. So that was deeper on the animal health. I'm going to skip the last slide because I think it's pretty dry. Questions on animal health or what we're doing there?
We've got one question from Miguel, who's in the audience again. Thanks, Miguel. How can we ensure that this tech isn't co-opted by the farming industry to justify or expand harmful practices under the guise of humane treatment?
I don't know. With any tool, there's an upside and there's a downside. I think all we can do is we can try to be as thoughtful as we can with how we deploy it and how we use it. We know that we're not going to be the only one that does this over time. So there's a limited amount of control, but I think as a company, we can choose to license it to people we believe are acting in good faith. Beyond that, I'm sure there's probably some really interesting regulatory work and some other work to be done. But I know that we'll try as much as we can to work with with partners in good faith. But it's a good question. I'd actually be really curious to chat about it more.
Does Companion focus presumably purely on companion animals? Yeah, interesting.
Yes. the physics of startups are such that you have to you only have enough resources and time to maybe do one thing for like one specific customer really well at first, and then you earn the right to do more. So we're still in the phase of, with the professional company, we're in the phase of let's really knock it out of the park, which we'll talk about here in a second. Good segue. See, you're thinking ahead. On the impact side of like, okay, let's make a huge, as we can, let's give veterinarians and pet parents a ton of help in this one specific condition, and hopefully earn the right in terms of like how they think about us, but also in terms of funds to then continue to do R&D for other conditions.
Thank you, John. Time for one more question before we move on.
Yes, let's do it.
From Alexandra. Alex, yeah.
Hello.
How do you foresee pharmaceutical companies adopting recorded footage in place of animal trials, for example, with pain trials? So using recorded footage instead of animal trials.
So I just got the draft of the latest agreement with one of our pharma partners to start instrumenting trials for this, which I'm super excited about. And the answer is it's going to be a long and arduous process. So like that whole industry, as you likely know, moves at a glacial pace, and it's even more glacial if you have to bring in the FDA and CVM. The really interesting thing about working with companion animals, and this could sound either good or really bad, but I've seen a lot of startups who literally they're in the health field generally, but they choose to work in companion animals first because it's so much faster than the human side. But they are raising money with the specific notion of, hey, we're going to work with animals first, then we're going to bring this to human, which is, you can take either a really good or really bad way. But here, like the CVM, the Center for Veterinary Medicine within the FDA, is more approachable. We're really excited that it's more approachable. They're a little bit faster than the human side. And we're excited that the pharma partner is sponsoring this work to go. They have much more weight in this industry. They're a huge public company. We're this little teeny startup. And so if we can work together to create the right data set, we can then we think we'll be able to create a new regulatory framework for how to think about these types of tools. And I'm not sure if I answered that question. Did I answer that? Cool. All right. Any more? Cool. All right. So impact. Very directly, we think there's tens of millions of dogs in pain right now that owners have no idea about. And I think there's a gentleman I listen to a lot on the meditation side. It's a guy named Sam Harris. Like his definition of doing good is reducing suffering. And that's what we're really excited about. Let's just reduce suffering in dogs as soon as we possibly can by telling people this happens, because most aren't treated. The basic idea is let's surface it and make it impossible to ignore so that pet parents know what to see. They know that it's the same thing. It's counterintuitive to many pet parents, but a dog yawning is not a dog sleepy. It's a dog anxious. And it's not intuitive to realize that. But when a dog hops or when a dog skips, it's not happy. It's not like kind of a little fun thing it does. It's in pain. And we want to be able to not only spot that in a supportive way and then help them see that over time so that ideally they have more empathy for their animals suffering. We talked about this before, or I talked about it before. We'd love in any way we can to reduce the pain, suffering, anxiety, stress of animal testing that goes on today. We are making a choice to work with some of the firms who do this because they are the gatekeepers for this data. We don't participate in these studies, but we want to displace all of these methods they currently use. And after that, we'd love to go much further. We'd love to go cross species, like I said, up and down conditions. And on terms of impact, this might be controversial, and it might seem, I'm curious what you guys would think of this. I only got a chance to meet a couple of you in very diverse backgrounds in the audience, but there's an argument for, this is super narrow, this is pretty niche, and I would totally agree. My theory on startups is that if you're very excited about this distant future, 10 to 20 years in the future, you don't raise $1 billion right now, or you can't, to go build that future right now. Instead, you have to look for stepping stones along the way. And so what we're doing is very specific, it's very intentional, which is that we think that in order to hit that 10 to 20 year future, to have a large impact, you have to create a scalable product. And it could be contentious in this group, which is, I know there's a lot of people focused on research. There's a lot of people focused on kind of an interesting proof of concept with a species that people don't have too much interaction with. We have a very concerted, a very pointed hypothesis that if you want to have a big impact, if you want to change lots of minds, you have to solve a problem for people at scale. So they really engage with it. It matters to their lives, and that's how we ultimately want to teach people more or allow people more empathy for these companion animals. So what we've done is kind of start with, one of the animals that people interact with the most, which is dogs. We've tried to solve what we think is one of the biggest problems right now, and ideally, if you are interested in doing something like this, our belief is that you find something common, like a deep emotional need where specifically with dog pain, everyone's interests are aligned, including even the insurers, which I didn't show here, but here's what Google Gemini thought of when I said show insurers, animal health execs, pet parents, and clinicians surrounding a dog, which is the clinician wants to give better care to the animal. The pet parent wants to know if their animal's in pain or not. And the pharma executive on the right-hand side, wants to sell pain medication. Everyone's interests are aligned in order to help that animal, which we really love about this particular use case. Cool. Any additional questions on that segment?
We've got a few more questions coming in, John. We'll ask one for now for time purposes. From Rachel, thank you very much. How far are we from being able to identify poor mental health in animals with AI? It's very interesting to think about applying that technology on factory farms.
I don't know is the honest answer. I don't think we're that far away from a technical perspective. We would love to work on that as soon as we possibly can. The physics of a startup means we can't go too wide yet, or else we'll lose focus and die. So we have to continue going down to pain and distribute that as far as we can. We're going to start distributing that in the US and UK this year with one of our big partners, and starting to go out now, which is great. But I would imagine we start collecting data for anxiety, depression within the next 12 to 18 months. And so hopefully something in production 18 months, a little bit after, maybe. That's if we get to focus on that. That's if we're not going across species because something else has distracted us, or there's some other, not distracted, but maybe there's some larger market that will help the company grow faster. It's hard to prioritize. It's one of the more interesting questions. What do you prioritize first? Do you prioritize production animals? Do you prioritize companion? Within species, what do you try to work on? Within conditions, what do you try to work on? And the approach, for better or for worse, that we've taken so far is we want to make sure the company survives. We think all of this stuff is valuable because it generally will reduce pain and suffering, or elevate, or at least surface that. And so we've taken the tact, either consciously or subconsciously, of okay, we need the company to survive. And if we can grow the company quickly, that means we get to spend more and more R&D dollars to go get data on these conditions, to go develop the models. Which is a very long-winded way of avoiding your direct question. My best guess is 18 months, maybe. I would love license to look at that right now. It's just hard with the way startups work. Cool. Any more? We got 10 more minutes. So this is just personal notes, which is always fun if you give me license in a couple minutes to talk about just things I'm thinking about. If you are interested, so this is to anyone out there who's working on a company, or so maybe they're interested in this hypothesis around having a scalable impact through a company. Maybe they're already working on it. It's hard. We always love spending time with founders. If you want to chat through any of this stuff, regardless if you're a founder or not, we'd be more than happy to talk. But for the folks out there who are doing this or thinking about it, I have some really controversial, I think we're already starting to see that the LLM bubble for the AI folks in the room is starting to collapse. And I think that's going to continue happening. It's going to be disastrous for many firms. I think that but I do think it's a really useful technology. I think the firms that will emerge strong are the ones that have really interesting data sets. So instead of the platforms that just create that slightly better model, they're firms that focus on, hey, there's very little of this data around the world. We're going to be the experts at it. And that's kind of what we've been doing. So our hypothesis has been we should be the data provider for the industry. Right now, animal health, all of these pharma firms and veterinary hospitals haven't recorded any of this stuff, which just shocked us when we got to this industry. And there weren't any tools for veterinarians to even get video from their clients at home other than asking for an iPhone video, which totally blew us away because it's actually really, really helpful for a clinician, a veterinarian, to see an animal move naturally, because they don't in the clinic because they're juiced up, they're scared. And so if you are interested in creating a company, we believe this technique has worked pretty well so far, which is create the tools in order to help the industry capture this stuff, become the base layer in the industry for that, because then you get access to all the interesting data. But also, especially in health industries, these firms have massive amount of R&D dollars, and you can actually fund a company off that. Our professional firm has been profitable since day one, simply because we can offer these tools and continue to build the products we're really interested in building without venture funding. Let's see. Yep, cool. And the other thing is, we're not getting paid to do this talk, but one thing I've learned about marketing as a founder is the video I showed up top. I always make the joke that oh, we do this video so I can't screw up the presentation. It's just all of the facts right here. But one tactic we've been using to get this message out quietly, because we don't distribute that video publicly. We just send it to animal health execs, and I'm going down tomorrow to talk on Monday night in Vegas at this veterinary conference. But it's very, very good at not only having a clear message, a visual message, which is able to soak into people's brains, but it also, you can send that video out from there and really permeate that message throughout an organization. And if you get people on board with the basic premise of your talk before you start riffing and doing what I'm doing right now, it's just speeds up adoption or belief in that technology. And the other thing is that you actually, and from a marketing standpoint, again, this is actually totally off AI for animals, but if for the founders out there, the craziest thing is that the conferences will pay you to do these talks. So not only are you like becoming quote unquote a thought leader in a new space potentially, but also like your marketing's paid for because they're paying for your travel and paying for you to do this. And again, it seems like a weird aside, but I've found this recently and I'm so excited for other founders potentially to use that tactic. Anyway, I think that's all I got. All right, who has questions? Anybody want to ask a live question in this room? God, I don't know. What do you think? I think we would love to earn the right to try to be one of the pieces of technology that helps bridge connections between the species. So in the same way you use Google Translate if you travel to Japan or if you go to some other country you don't know the language, we would love to earn the right to help with those interactions. And as the initial mission slides talked about, at the very least, if we can help generate empathy for one species or multiple species, that would be really cool. If we can go beyond that, fantastic. And I don't have a sense of, I'm by no means, we get to work with all these amazing people who are scientists, clinicians who understand animals far better than I ever will. I generally get to help out on like, okay, how do you create a product? How do you scale it? But I don't know what the limits are in terms of what we can determine just from computer vision or maybe some audio. I'd be really curious to see how far into conscious thinking we might be able to go. I don't know yet, but yeah, like I think that one of, I'll say this, which is I'm really excited about the combination of hardware plus software, the two different companies. Hardware is insanely hard, as you know. If you're going to be a founder, that's the hardest way to be a founder. And so it gives you access to data that you would have no other way to get access to. And once you have it, it's an order of magnitude higher revenue. So your company is much more likely to survive once you have steady revenue. But getting to that point, but the hardware, like the way I originally thought about it is, how do we kickstart a conversation with millions of animals on a scalable way? And that's how I think about like when our devices are interacting with a dog in home, it's a conversation. It's a different format for the conversation. It's maybe a different bandwidth, however you want to define it. But that was the really interesting thing to me is how do you create scalable interactions that can generate data that a machine can then interpret over time? And that's what got me most excited. So a long way of saying, like, I think it's quite likely we start bringing more and more of the health stuff over to the hardware side, and you'll see more devices interacting with animals around us in our environments. At first looking for health stuff, but then hopefully more and more giving more insight into conscious thinking. And I don't know the limit of it, which is hopefully like an okay answer to that question.
Question from Paul. Have you considered partnering with vets and vet techs to facilitate telehealth for pets?
Yeah, totally. We get that all the time. And the telehealth, my take on it as an industry outsider is that it's not a binary thing. There's different spectrums of telehealth. There's a telehealth version where you go into your normal brick and mortar clinic, and as a follow-up, they ask you, like, hey, can you take a video because I want to check in on the surgery your dog just got 2 weeks later. That actually is telehealth. Like, you're not in person, right? The hardest part about answering that question well is that telehealth is a hugely controversial subject right now in the veterinary industry. There's different parts of the industry who think it's fantastic in the future. There's parts of it who think it's going to disintermediate the clinician, and we have to be very, very sensitive to that. So that's part of the reason why we haven't made a lot of public announcements. Our marketing strategy is to talk to all the KOLs, talk to all the leaders, and make sure we design this in ways that veterinarians actually want to use it. So maybe I'll give this example, which might be controversial. We firmly believe in not offering a direct-to-consumer app, potentially ever. Over time, maybe, but right now, to engender ourselves as a tool to clinicians, not meant to displace them, we give them the agency over it. So they're the ones who decide, do you want us to send a video request to your client at home? The client is not able to just take a video randomly and send it to the veterinarian, because the last thing we want is for a client, a pet parent, to take a video and say, hey, I think I see this thing, and then send it to the veterinarian. The veterinarian's like, where's this from? So I hope that we are in the right for veterinarians to say, hey, you should give this tool to our clients, who just give them directly. That'd be great. But we want to be really, really careful about how we do that first. I don't think so. So my own take as an outsider in the industry is that I think my take is that veterinarians are the folks who know animal health the best. I'll just be very pointed. One of the most important changes I think that happens in the clinician room is changing the human's behavior. I think they're incredibly effective at doing so. And so at the very least, I think that will always be there. And I think that I get to work with a lot of the veterinarians who are on our advisory board, and there's so much nuance to what they do. It's incredibly important in order to the showmanship that goes into convincing a pet parent their dog's in pain. So like one of the things I'm most excited about with our technology is now a clinician, instead of trying to convince a pet parent that their dog's in pain, which many of them don't want to acknowledge, because then they're like, wait, my dog's been in pain for the last 6 months and I haven't noticed it and I haven't done anything about it. It's really hard to convince a pet parent of that. But if a clinician can swing the monitor over and show, here's how your dog was moving 6 months ago, here's how it's moving today, it makes it that much easier. So I really actually do see ourselves as a tool for veterinarians to use to both give them eyeballs everywhere, but also to make their job easier, which at the end of the day is changing the human behavior in order to enact the health consequence they desire for the dog, right? Or the animal.
John, thank you very much. That's all we've got time for today. Thanks to the audience for your questions. For myself personally, I'm particularly inspired by your focus on reducing suffering and also by your vision of increasing empathy for all animals. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for your work. Final round of applause for John, please.